Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this very special webinar with the Maestro and Pandit Bickram Ghosh, who I warmly welcome to SOAS South Asia Institute forum, co-hosted with Sangeet Foundation for this wonderful session on music, a discussion on music and mind that we are going to host today. Pandit Bickram Ghosh does not really need a very long introduction, but I want to highlight a few his long list of achievements. He was awarded the second highest civilian award, the Banga Bhushan in West Bengal, India, and he's a globally acclaimed percussionist and a new age star known for his experimental music. He was born to a highly acclaimed music family, the son and disciple of the great Tabla Maestro Pandit Shankar Ghosh. And his mother is also a very well-known classical vocalist, Sangeet Ghosh. And his Carnatic training also comes from Pandit S Sekhar. Bickram has an impressive array of recordings, over 100, just to not take into factoring in all the new ones that are lined up, as well as 14 Hindi and Bengali scoring, documentaries, television, and acting in films. And he's also fulfilled ambassadorial roles as well. He's a versatile artist who has also performed with very distinguished Hindustani and Carnatic classical artists. Names that you probably already know: Pandit Ravi Shankar, with whom he has worked for 11 years. Others in the list are Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, Ustad Amjad Ali Khan, Pandit Shivkumar Sharma. He has, most importantly, a great following among the country's youth as a pioneer in new age experimental music. So there's a lot for us to look forward to in today's conversation, which is going to be about music, mental health, and especially at a time when we are really talking a lot more about mental health than we used to before the pandemic. I also want to introduce you to Jayanta Ray, who is the founding director of Sangeet Foundation, who's co-hosting the event with us, and tell us a little bit about Sangeet Foundation's work, mental health, and his own sort of journey with music and mind. Over to you, Jayanta, if you would like to add a few lines.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. So Sangeet Foundation is about creating happiness through music and the arts. So, and it's also about creating a safe space for sharing and discussing mental wellness using various art forms. So, like we have had the privilege of partnering with SOAS, we have been partnering with other universities as well to do a bit of research and to talk to various musicians and work with various musicians and various art forms to be able to highlight awareness about mental health, as well as to use arts and music as a therapy for mental health. And we have been working also, they have been connect with the NHS, which is the local healthcare system, government healthcare system in UK, to see what else we could do to create awareness about mental health and using music and the arts as a therapy. Now, interestingly, I got talking to Bickram the other day through a friend of mine, and I made a request to him to say, this is what we are doing. And I explained why Sangeet Foundation was there. Sangeet Foundation is basically was created because I had a problem in the house. Well, there was that I used to consider a problem. I know it's a blessing that I have, where my daughter came back from university and she was declared adult with adult ADHD, deep anxiety, dyspraxia, and so on. And they were all terms to me. Even today, they are all terms. She struggled, but she used medication. Of course, it's a medical problem. So she used medication, meditation, music and counseling to help her. And when we spoke about music, there's something which really transformed her. So she started learning drumming. And that happened to be very, very therapeutic for her. And which is why, Bickram's music, it really resonated for me. And thank you so much, Bickram, for taking it up to talk about your art form and mental health. At some point in time, I want to learn from you, why is it that drumming has been so therapeutic for her? I know that it has helped, and I thank God for that. But I don't know the science behind it, or the art behind it, or the blessing behind it. I just know that it happened. So at some point in time, I would like to know that from you. But that's about Sangeet Foundation, and I guess we will move on from there. Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Janto, for briefing us on Sangeet Foundation and your own personal experience here with music and mental health. With some permission from Bickram, if I can just play the few minutes of the ultimate performer to give some of our audience joining and are not exactly familiar with it, just a background, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Certainly. Certainly.
That was just the first few minutes of a journey with you. And it kind of showed some buzzwords already on the video, which is about high energy fusion. And it just kind of, you know, in a personal conversation earlier, you mentioned that you would like to bring on some triggers in this conversation. And I just wanted to kickstart with saying it's a fantastic journey where it shows the various places that it took over, rhythmscape across England, across Spain. So a little bit about your encounters with the famous George Harrison in the UK, and you know, some of the musicians that you met in this rhythmscapes journey or earlier, and your years in the UK as well. I'm sure this would be a great starter question for you, if you can just bring out.
Sure. Sure, Sangeeta. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you, Janto. Pleasure to be on the show, and my greetings and namaste to all who are tuning in today. Well, I have had, so to say, a blessed journey with my career and life, because I don't think the two are really separate one from the other. Especially when you're a musician or an artist, then you're. Sangeeta, I think there's a sound issue going on somewhere in somebody's feed.
Yeah, if everybody just mute.
Yeah, that's good.
If
it's
they're
gone
not
now.
talking, then that's great. Yeah.
Right, we're good. So the musical journey and the journey of life are always intrinsically woven one into the other. Why? The reason is that anybody who becomes a musician chooses to become a musician. You don't really kind of, on very rare occasions are you kind of, coerced or forced into being a musician. But it is something you choose, and it is something you deeply love. So you do that. And what comes with the package of being a musician is a certain kind of lifestyle. And one of the beautiful things about being a musician is that you get to travel a lot, and especially in my kind of music, which is A, universal, B, which is not region bound, C, which is collaborative. These reasons contribute to making that particular journey really expansive. And I have really enjoyed that I've been a tabla player professionally now for 35 years. And I started out very early. And from there, I think what the day it all really took off was the day that I was taken on board by Guruji, the great Pandit Ravi Shankar ji. And that was the year 1993. And from there onwards, I really never looked back, so to say. Of course, you have your internal journeys, internal turmoil, internal decisions. But when you are launched in a way by a rocket, Raviji was nothing short of a rocket. He was the lighthouse, really. So that turns your life around on its head, really. And that's what happened to me. I was very young, still in my mid-20s, and he took me on, and I started traveling the world with him. On those journeys, of course, I met these great artists. And it goes without saying that I met George Harrison through him, because George was his disciple. And so the first time I really met George properly, he used to come to the concert, to Raviji's concert every year at the Barbican Center. So there was invariably a concert at the Barbican Center every year. And I would remember from 93 to 2003-04, the whole period that I was playing with him, that there was a mandatory Barbican Center concert. And George would come to that concert every time. And but I really got to know him first when we recorded the famous album, The Chants of India, which was a collaboration between Guruji Raviji and George. George produced it, and Raviji composed it, and he was the mastermind. So we were actually we were staying in Henley on Thames for a period of 10 days, a whole lot of us. So many of those artists today are big names, big classical musicians, all of course students of Guruji. And we stayed those 10 days there, and we were literally in George's house, because even though we were in a hotel, we would come down for the whole day and record in a studio and be around the house. And we were just, everybody was hanging. And that was the first time I got to know him. And somehow I think he liked me and he liked my playing. And he used to affectionately call me in later years the Prince of Tabla, which was like something unbelievable for me, because I mean, this is George Harrison giving you a name, and I was like, oh my God, are you even serious about this? But so George, so far it was enough for me, really. But what came as the icing on the cake was the year 1999, when I was in, and so as I said, we were in England every year with Raviji. And I was traveling to England even before that. First time I went was in 1990, when I went for the Asian Music Circuit Tour, and with my father's music of the drums orchestra. And I did actually perform at and for SOAS in years that followed. And I remember doing a long workshop. There were many of us there. Yu Srinivas, the late Yu Srinivas, is a dear friend of mine. And Rajan Sajan Mishra ji, and many others, you know. So I'm very familiar with SOAS. So, and that the whole work in Asian music that has been going on in the UK. So in fact, me, my father, we were all very kind of instrumental in bringing tabla there in many ways, and of course through the organizations Chakradar and Darbar. And the original organization was Tal, which great Gurmeet Virdi Saab had started. So there is a long history with the UK for me. And then George invited me in 1999 to play on his album Brainwashed, which was the last album, posthumously released and Grammy nominated. So I went, so he said, will you play? I said, I mean, are you seriously even asking me? But so then I find I was staying in an apartment in Kilburn. And the day he was supposed to send me a car, the landlord said, "Hey, Bickram, look what's below for you." So I went and looked down the window. There was a stretch limousine there. And so I went to Henley on Thames again, spent the whole day with George, and we recorded. We had a meal. We talked. He showed me his garden, which is very dear to him, and a deeply spiritual man. And really, we had a fantastic day that particular day. I think it stays with me because of the energy that George had. He was literally not existing in the space of the humongous celebrity that he was, but he chose to live like this normal person, even more than a normal person, I would say, because he was very, very deeply spiritual. He led a spiritual life. So yes, my journey with him, and of course with Guruji, so many other people. I mean, having worked with greats like Mstislav Rostropovich in Evian in 97, 98, then so many others. I mean, the list is endless, you know, having met so many people through him. So I'm really blessed with that Pandit Ravi Shankar ji came into my life, and I got those breaks. And it not only expanded my musicality, but it expanded the horizons of my mind, because I realized that music is universal. It is not. It may exist in pockets, in genres, in stylistic boxes, but eventually it is a mode of communication which is universal.
Yeah, thank you for briefing us a little bit about these personal encounters and personal stories that we normally don't get to read or find them quite easily. So I'm just going to gently drift you into this idea of the fusion, as if your journey with Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, or your encounter with George Harrison kind of introduced you to the idea of fusion, or were you obviously thinking of music in a broader sense when you were brought up in your in your household as well.
Yes.
That's some kind of a departure there, or was there some kind of a continuity there? That's one thing. And secondly, I just wondered, when you say expansion of your horizon, it's not just about knowing Western ideas of music, but also I want to draw the question of rhythm here, because in an earlier conversation you were saying that Indian rhythm is cyclic, Western rhythm is more about the linearity of music. So, how do these ideas then started playing in your mind, and whether your encounter with either George Harrison or the others you mentioned, those kind of discussions were already taking place during this time? The formation of fusion music is kind of very interesting for us, I think, in this discussion of universalizing music for mental health.
Shangita, yes. Well, that's a great question, but it's also very loaded, and it has many departures within itself. Yeah. So I know time is limited, so we'll have to touch on all of this. So let me try and kind of answer that as eruditely as I possibly can. Well, quick word about how I grew up, and which is, I think, the basic reason why fusion music, for want of a better word, I do not like the word. Let me make that very clear here. Fusion it can mean anything, and it already has this little cousin called confusion, which people joke about. I have to tell you a little bit about the juxtaposition in my life as a child. Mm-hmm. So I was born in Kolkata. Then, before I was 1 year old, I was taken to the United States of America, where I grew up till I was almost 6 years old, because both my parents were teaching at the Ali Akbar College of Music in California. The city was San Rafael, to be precise, very near San Francisco, just across the Golden Gate Bridge. And so I grew up there in a milieu which was very, I would say it was, of course, deeply rooted in classical music, but was also kind of world music-y, if there's a word, mm-hmm. Because I'll tell you why. Because, of course, it was Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, my father, Pandit Shankar Ghosh, Ali Akbar ji, the great, incredible music of the 60s, and what was going on was beyond the heavens and, in the stars there. But there was also, it was like a hub of sorts, the Ali Akbar College. It still is. Pandit Ravi Shankar ji was coming there, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab was coming there. We lived in a two-storied house. We were on the upper floor, and below was Ustad Zakir Hussain and Pandit Chitras Das, who were living there. And so this is, they were very young, and that whole atmosphere. So Zakir ji even babysitted me. Ustad Ashish Khan babysitted me. My parents would go for concerts. So that was very deeply classical, but at the same time, Mickey Hart of the Grateful Dead was my father's student. At the same time, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab was collaborating with John Handy, the great saxophonist. So all of that was happening around me, and me being a baby had no idea, but maybe subconsciously stuff was going in. Then jump cut to life in Kolkata back in 1972, and I started studying in La Martiniere for Boys, which had almost no kind of connection with Indian classical music. It was very, very westernized, and we were brought up in a very, very Western atmosphere in school. So even the little songs we were learning were like a tissue, go tell Aunt Nancy, that stuff, So we're from the same generation. So you probably, something might just, click there.
I'm not saying anything to that.
Well, all right. So that period was very, very important, because in the morning I was in La Martiniere, and in La Martiniere we had a band, and obviously my friends were not really interested in Indian classical music because they were not taught there. The atmosphere was not such, but we formed a band in school, and in that band I was the conga player. And so we were doing covers for the Rolling Stones, Bee Gees, and Beatles. And imagine, I get to work with George Harrison later in life, so I was doing covers in the 70s and in that band. But I used to walk down from school to where my mother was learning, walking distance from school. That was the house of Ustad Ali Khan, the great doyen of the Patiala Gharana. And my mother was learning from his son, the incredible singer, Ustad Ali Khan. And I would walk down because Ma was just around the corner, and I would sit there, be in the class for a bit, and when Ma was ready to leave, I would come home with her. This continued throughout my school life. So there, I would enter. I used to go up the steps in that house, and I could hear Kinare Kinare, Ayana Balam, and a complete jump from what I was listening to in the morning, because we were doing Bee Gees and Rolling Stones, and then I was entering Munawar Khan Sahab's house. And as soon as I would enter in my school uniform, Khan Sahab would say, "Arey beta aa gaya, baith ja, theka laga." So from playing the congas and trying to be a daku potato of OCB, so we were quite influenced those days, you know. But I was back to being the tabla player right away. So the atmosphere at home and school were really kind of contradictory, and somewhere in my head, it sat. In a young child's head, it sits quite comfortably, because you begin to see there's not much difference. I'm playing a drum there, I'm playing a drum here. It's just another world, it's another world, and yeah, everything can coexist, you know. Then, once I became a professional tabla player, traveling with Ravi ji, meeting all these people, otherwise also traveling with my father's orchestra to Japan, to the UK, traveling with other artists, I think my eyes opened, and I started to view music very holistically. I started seeing that it wasn't really, relegated to little pockets. So that, I think, the school days combined with sudden divergence of vision that happened during my professional life, combined, a sound was growing in my head. And it was abstract at that point. But somewhere in the late 90s and early 2000s, right? I mean, the year 2000, it fructified, took the shape of a rhythmscape and what followed later on. So I did a lot of changes in the soundscaping, but the content was all classical. So even if I do a body drumming, I do a cheek drumming, or I use a hand sonic SH101 bass guitar tone on my left hand, or I would use a losa tabla. It is all a mix of different energies that I've had, and I work with frequencies. And now this is going to answer the second part of your question. So I realized that there were frequencies that Indian classical music, a particular frequency that it did not address. And that was the very, very low end, almost sub frequency, you know. So you don't have a bass guitar. You do not have a double bass in Indian classical music. So the baya is as low as it gets, but you don't have the real low sub sound. So I brought that sub sound in with the hand sonic SH101 bass guitar tone, and I used that on my left with my left hand. So I swapped from the baya to the hand sonic, use that tone. So the minute that comes in, it gives that really sub sound, which the youth found trendy, and then they started kind of feeling, oh wow, this frequency is really hitting me here, and I like that. And at the same time, we are feeding the content of Indian classical raga and tala into their heads. So that whole journey that was my personal life spilled over into my performance life and took the shape of Rhythmscape eventually. And then, of course, all that followed. Rhythmscape was the first and is still my flagship project. So that is that's kind of how it all worked out. But I'm going to touch from frequency to cyclic now, because you brought that up. So Indian tala is cyclic, the rhythmic cycle. We call it the rhythmic cycle. Tala is a rhythmic cycle, as opposed to many traditions which are rhythmically linear. The cyclic concept of tala is pretty in sync with Indian philosophy, the zero. So when we talk about infinity, infinity is not a straight line. If it was a straight line, then there would be a beginning and an end. So how do you connect a straight line? The only way you connect a straight line and make it infinite is by drawing a circle. So that is the concept of the tala as well. Why is it important to have a cyclic tala? Well, because nature is cyclic. So you have 24 hours in a day. You have 12 months in a year, 365 days in a year. The rotation of the earth on its own axis is 24 hours, cycle. So you have day turning into night, night turning into day, cyclic. You have 365 days a year, a revolution around the sun. You have even Halley's Comet coming in every 75 years or so. So everything in the universe is cyclic. And when tala is married to this concept, then tala takes on a greater metaphorical value. So it is no longer just a rhythmic cycle, but it also becomes a philosophy. And there's much more to it. I mean, really, that the content of your question is a workshop, a 4-hour workshop.
That's
So,
great.
but,
Right,
I've got the
absolutely.
concept now.
So yeah, well, I'll leave it at that for
To
now.
get a
True.
workshop out from you, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be great. So
Yes.
I think that was a fabulous question there. And I was wondering, Bickram, if you could do a little bit of demonstration of what you spoke about, and is that something which you can bring in over here?
I just want to interject here very quickly because I think there is a flow here from the first to the second demonstration, because
Okay.
rhythm is everywhere for you, and I just feel that you are going beyond the tabla instrument in looking at soundscape and the energy of the soundscape, because everywhere you find the rhythm. So I feel if that can be told to our audience or shown
Right.
Yeah.
So, Jayanto, what I will do
Jayanto, if
is,
you can just mute your microphone because it makes that background noise. Thank you.
yeah, right. So, Jayanto, I will of course address what you said, but I will take on Sangeeta's question because I'll go with the flow so that it's nicely connected, and then we will reach the performance, and then we will bid adieu. You know, but let's just touch upon a few important ideas before that. So, Tala is cyclic. Tala is macrocosmic, as we just kind of said that, you know, if the universe is set to Tala, to a rhythmic cycle, then it is macrocosmic, but the rhythm is microcosmic. And why is it microcosmic? That's what's important. So what is the one single thing that people check to check if a person is alive or dead? Tell me, Sangeeta.
The pulse, the heart.
Yes, spot on. So the heartbeat. Look at the words. The heartbeat or the pulse rate. So both are rhythmic terminologies. So rhythm is so important that if you don't have a rhythm inside you, you're not even alive. So that's the microcosm, and that's the importance of rhythm. That's how important it is. And I've come to realize this gradually through life, you know, how important it is. So I get a lot of questions that, you know, people say, youngsters especially say, oh, sir, we understand all of that. We get it that, you know, it's rhythm is, even Pluto is running on rhythm, you know. But how does it affect my life? You know, I have relationship issues. I have a girlfriend whom I want to propose to. How does rhythm get into all of that? So I have a pretty interesting answer to that, you know, for them all the time, and I get a lot of that. Trust me. So rhythm is not just this cosmic phenomena. It is also something that you use effectively and should use effectively in daily life, in interpersonal communication. So let's just flash back 24 hours when I met Jayanto. I saw Jayanto yesterday for the first time as well, but I spoke to him on the phone. But I saw you for the first time yesterday as well. So suppose I met Sangeeta and yesterday when I met you, and suppose we met and you say, hi Bickram, how are you? Hey, it's so nice to see you, and you know, we're looking forward to tomorrow and interacting on this call, and it's going to be great fun. And what if I said in answer to that, yes, Sangeeta, sorry, a phone jumped in. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So suppose I said in reply, yes, Sangeeta, it is very nice to meet you. I am looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow also. We will have a great time on this call, and let's await tomorrow. It will be great fun, I'm sure. Thank you. You would think that's kind of strange. That's kind of weird, you know. What's wrong with this guy? So, what is wrong with that answer? The answer is bereft of two rhythmic components. One, modulation. Two, accent. So if I throw in modulation and accent, then I would say, hi, Sangeeta. It's so good to be here. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. So you throw in accent and modulation, and we become friends right away. It's as simple as that. So in interpersonal relationships, if you learn rhythm and you understand how to modulate, how to accentuate the right points, then your communication becomes way stronger. And when you become more adept at communication, then your relationships thrive, then your life looks better, and you don't feel isolated because you're getting through to people. And people are getting through to you. You understand, even if somebody doesn't have those qualities, you understand, okay, so the accent and modulation is a little off, but that's a nice person anyway. So you still decode things better. So that's why rhythm is incredibly important on a cosmic level. Another fun example I like throwing into the mix is always okay. So another very important component of rhythm, and I'm going to hold on to that word. Give you an example. So you're crossing the road, somebody on the other side of the road also crossing. So Sangeet's crossing the road from this end, and Jayanto's crossing the road from the other side of the footpath. And there's a car coming full speed, and Sangeet sees Jayanto on the other side, who hasn't noticed the car and is stepping out onto the road. And you, Sangeet, you mean to shout out to Jayanto and say, "Hey, Jayanto, hold on, there's a car coming." Instead, you say, "Hey, Jayanto, there is a..." So what are you off on? You're off on tempo. You make a wrong tempo judgment. So a person wants to propose to a lady and goes and says, "Jana, love you, I want to marry. Jana, love you, I want to marry." Tempo judgment, wrong. You probably get refused, So these are all rhythmic, intrinsically rhythmic components. If you get it right, I think life is better, is easier. Hope that answered your question.
Absolutely, it did.
Yeah, just a quick one, because I'll do a time check. We have 10 more minutes, and right. Which is why perhaps if we could move into the mental health aspect of it as well.
Absolutely.
As thought. I just love to hear you play on any platform. I love that video, and I would love if you could do that for us. That is really lovely. So if you...
Okay, so should I? Okay, so I will do a spot of that, and then we'll touch on mental health.
Yeah.
So okay, so
we were talking about the language of tabla, right? In your exposition, you were basically touching on how the language of percussion and the language of tabla can then be woven into this whole idea of universal.
So let me do a spot of that whole thing. I'll weave that whole thing together in 5 minutes. Yeah. It's content for 2 hours, but we'll try and do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, great feeling.
Surface. Now the problem of playing on a surface right now is I'll have to take my phone off the tripod. Somebody's got to hold it. It's complicated, but there are always live surfaces. I can play on this table here, but I could also play on a live surface which is not a drum. So. No offense to myself.
Spot on.
So, don't say that, it hurts. Well, so that's a spot of cheek drumming.
That is really fantastic. Thank you.
So that's something I've been doing for a while, and I learned it from an African friend of mine, and I kind of made it. I changed the idiom to suit the Indian milieu, the Indian drumming milieu, so that I could play it in my concerts, and it doesn't sound out of context with the tabla. Now I'm going to touch upon the language that Shankar said, and that also becomes a veritable performance of sorts for Jayanto. The language of drumming is really interesting because it is onomatopic. Now, those who don't know what it means the sound echoes the sense. So Bickram was walking down the road and he fell down with a bang. What does bang mean? Bang is just a sound echoing a sense. So I was walking and I hit the door with a thud. Thud is an onomatopoeic word. So onomatopoeia is the source of the tabla language. So anything that you play on the tabla and you speak sounds the same. I will demonstrate that in a bit for you because the tabla is there. I'm going to kind of reorient the camera. But before doing that, I want to also give you a little slice of Bol Parant, which then becomes a performance. And we have this really amazing tradition of attaching stories to Bol Parant. Bol Parant means speaking the syllables of drumming. So my father did something really clever and he was great at it. And my inspiration for the storytelling thing is from him completely. I mean, I just copy him on that, you know. So he used to tell me little stories when I was a child. And he would tell me these stories and hope that I would get attracted to the tabla. Because, you know, I had I was in school, I was trying to be Daku Potato and all of that, you know. So one of the stories he used to tell me is about a little boy who goes to school every day. And every day he goes to school and in his heart, he hopes that, oh God, make it a holiday. Let me be able to go home and play, you know. So one day he reaches school and the gates are shut and the gateman says to him, Baba, chutti hai, it's a holiday, go home. So he's so happy, he dances his way back home, dances, comes home, rings the doorbell, his mother opens the door and he says, Mommy, guess what? It's a holiday. And mommy, like every other mommy, says, so what? Go and study. So he's crestfallen and he starts studying, but he's excited inside. So he runs out into the courtyard and starts playing. Mommy goes after him, catches him, and brings him back. Second time, again catches him. Third time, she brings him back, catches him by the ear. Sit and study, bangs the door shut on his face. This little story, like my father told me 45 years back, in Tabla language. Boy goes to school, gate is shut, it's a holiday. He dances his way back home. Dancing back home. Doorbell. Mommy, it's a holiday. Dhatuna natuna kritika kritika gendran gendran dhatuna katada. That's an example of a little story, which is a tabla tukra, but it has a story. Another one which I kind of made up the other day is about the jungle. The jungle has animals, big animals, small animals. So you have a big animal chasing a small animal. And finally, the small animal escapes. So here goes. And it's a tukra. I'm going to say the tukra in typically tabla fashion first. And then I'm going to show you the analogy with the animals. So that's the tukra. Now see, big animal, small animal. The rabbit. Escapes. So you have a whole world which you can construct through tabla language. And so what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to play a little bit for you so that we so the jointer doesn't complain to me later on. And I'm going to hopefully get it in a way so that you guys can see the tabla as well. And I will be a bit away from the mic because
we can still see. So
you will be able to see. Just give me a second. There you go.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, so it's a bit wonky with the headphone, really. But can you hear this? You can hear?
Yeah, we can hear.
So I'm going to play the last tukra, the animal one, now in tabla style. So this is how it goes. I'll play the whole thing together now. That's a little animal story. We have a variety of possibilities with tabla. I think another fun thing which your audience may enjoy. It's typically Bengali, but everybody enjoys it because, you know, we tabla players, we don't play with sticks. We play with our hands. But we, on occasion, imitate stick drumming. And this bowl is imitative of the Bangla dhak, the dhak which is intrinsic to Durga Puja. So we use the two fingers as like sticks, imitative of sticks, and play this. Dhak. Well, there you go with a little bit of performance. And I think we should touch on the mental health thing quickly so that we don't.
That was really good. Thank you so much for that, Bickram.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jayanto, do you want to quickly touch on, or shall I just round up a little bit on mental health?
So I think the question that I asked about my daughter, perhaps if you can help me understand what was going on there when she, which brought her back to me.
All right. So see, as I said before, music is about frequencies.
John, to your end as well. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So as I said before, music is about frequencies. And rhythm is a part of the musical world. So if we stick to rhythm, because your daughter is a drummer, there are frequencies what do these frequencies do? The human brain has triggers. Some of those triggers are negative triggers. And most often than not, those are the part of the emotional brain and the intellectual brain. But the brain is not just that. There's more than that to the brain. So the brain has happiness points as well. And all of these are really certain frequencies that we are vibrating on, So if you look at the Indian melodic system, I'll come to the tala later. Look at the melodic system and how scientific it is. The whole concept of tal is woven around the time of day. So you have the early morning ragas, Bhairavi, Ayr Bhairo and all of this. So you move into afternoon, you have a Madhuvanti, you go to the evening, you can have Rageshri, Bhageshri, late night, Darbari Kanra. So even in the transition from day to night, you have a raga Shri. So Shri is a raga which is made specifically for that transitional period, when the sun is going down. Why did they do this? Because when we sing or play notes which vibrate with nature, with the cosmos, then we are connecting somehow with cosmos. The only reason that we are unhappy is when we are disconnected with the cosmos. So that's philosophical, It's not. You can regard it as science, philosophy, whatever you like, But if you are disconnected with the universe, you do not see the beauty of it, which is the reason that you are happy. You're happy when you see yourself as part of this amazing cosmic orchestra, So then you are sure that you are blessed in a blessed life. But when we are consistently bombarded with information which is contradictory, and that's through life experiences, other people, what have you, But if we look at nature for our sustenance, for our source, then you see that the natural frequencies, the natural visual elements, sound elements that are in nature, almost everything that you hear when you're meditating, I mean, all of this, the whole concept of meditation that is there through hearing is a lot of it has nature sounds. So nature sounds, why? Because nature is the ideal. It is why we are here. We are part of nature. We have to vibrate with nature. How can you vibrate without a frequency? You vibrate on a frequency. So the raga system is that frequency. Similarly, with drumming, with whatever you do, you are in one moment when you're playing, you are no longer Jayanto or Bikram or Sangjukta. In that moment, you have forgotten who you are, who your mother is, who your child is, who everything else you've forgotten. You're existing in that moment, purely in that moment of sound, because you're concentrating completely on what you're doing. So that gives you a respite from all the problems that you have being Jayanto or Bikram or Sangjukta, So you have cut out the I from the equation in that moment. So I no longer exists. The minute you cut out the I, you are in bliss, because you are simply vibrating with the sound. And sound is happiness, sound is purity, sound is wonderful. And sound doesn't judge. Words judge. Why I always say the Tabla language is, I describe Tabla language as an equally potent language, but simply without agenda. So you do not have, if I speak to you and I say, Jayanto, Kardati Dagana Dha. Now, the minute I say, Jayanto, Kigo, Kiro Macho, by if I say, Jayanto, Kiro Machen, by if I say, Jayanto, Kiro Machish, immediately agenda is coming in. So if I say Kiro Machish, he might get offended. If I say Kiro Machen, he will feel formal, Bikram. It's all agenda. But the rhythmic language has no agenda. It just has the expression, the phonetic changes. That purity is what one derives, and probably what your daughter was deriving from her experience with drumming. That there's no agenda there anymore. There is no buzzwords which are triggering things, It's just vibrating on a frequency of purity in connection with the cosmos. That is why musicians are lucky. That is why musicians are blessed, is the way I look at it.
Thank you so much for that, Bickram.
You're welcome.
Thank you as well. Jayanto, do you have anything else to ask right now? Or
yeah, I think Bickram needs to leave, and he had requested that he needs to leave. So I thought perhaps if you could do the closing honors, that would be great.
Sure. Okay. If you can just mute yourself, please.
Yeah.
It helps. Thank you, Bickram, for a wonderful session. I mean, as I feel that there's a lot of questions that probably could have come from the audience, and we have asked already participants if they want to ask questions, then please go ahead and unmute your microphones and put your questions through, either by chat or by raising your hand and unmuting yourself and putting the question through. But while we are waiting still for that, I think we have a few minutes to wrap up and say that we had some very interesting thoughts on percussion itself, and the fact that it's such a universal thing that whether it's Africa, Latin America, or India, you are engaging with percussion. And I think one of the key things that I found interesting in your case was this weaving the storytelling, which you said you got from your father. And I feel that the characters that you talk about, whether it's a leaping deer or the cosmology of Shiva, or just the hissing train that you talk about, there's a lot of non-human to human interactions that you bring on in your tabla play as well. And when you talk of mental health, I think you are talking of the non-human relationship as well through your tabla. And I think these are quite interesting takeaways, especially around this time of pandemic, when we are revisiting the whole question of our relationship with nature, number one. And secondly, I think mental health itself is transiting from just being a clinically diagnosed illness to very microcosmic ideas of what it is to remain well. Mentally well is also a very everyday thing now. So people are wanting to engage with music, and music therapy is now opening up for further discussion, I feel. So I'm kind of reminded a little bit of the historical flow here, because the pandemic of the 2020s is being related to, say, during the First World War, when army headquarters started using music for treating traumatic army officers. So, the idea of wellness with music has been a long-standing one. But clinically, I think the way clinicians use percussion, which is different kinds of instruments, that is still not used in institutions, for instance. Institutions are still talking of tabla in terms of the gharana, the classical, and a certain set of training. But I think with your kind of work, with your kind of fusion music, I feel you're expanding that domain quite a lot by making it, use of everyday sound and your soundscape. I think that is a very interesting.
I'm just going to say throw in a word there, Shankar, because you raised something that's important. Because see, it is we all have our respective professions.
Yeah.
We must learn to see, find something either in our profession or in our life. It could be another avenue of work that we do in our life, which must be connected to a larger vision. If we are able to do that. So if I only talk about the gharanas, that's the way I see my profession. If I just talk about gharanas and I just talk about, okay, this is the technicality of tabla, which is an essential thing, one has to do that to learn tabla, then I am localizing the potential of rhythm. But if I begin to open it up and go deeper, and for me personally, that happened because I studied English literature. And through my doing the master's degree with literature, there were so many ideas which came to me that I understood that the rhythm that I was playing, just the whole connection between prosody and rhythm and all of that, it is so incredibly interesting that you begin to then think that what you're doing has greater ramifications. It's not just a tabla bowl. It is frequencies. And so I think if we look at our own lives, our own professions, and find nuggets of wisdom and open it up for people, then I think we are helping each other to live better lives.
Sure. There's just one question that Debashish Bhattacharya, who is a participant here, he probably knows you, and he's written you look different from what you looked in school. And he mentions an article in Nature that says music, though therapeutic, does not prevent mental health problems in people who are predisposed. And this is why there is a high incidence among musicians. And what you as community doing to prevent further tragedies? I don't think we can prevent further tragedies, but I think all over the world, I know for sure that there are these small drumming circles all over the world that people do find percussion some kind of a way of engaging the community. It's more of a community music, which is why I think percussion has a different role to play in mental health therapy.
Well, to answer Debashish's question, well, I don't see him, so I would have probably recognized from my past. But thank you for that question, Debashish, because see, there is a lot of potential in music to help in any given scenario. One is not saying take away the medication. One is not saying take away everything else. One is saying that what are the components that help? So if you are having you're taking a pill for something, for example, then you also take a vitamin, or you take something else. So all of it together becomes your kind of axis on which you're rotating with a certain kind of meaningfulness. So that rhythm and music is definitely very, very potent. It helps a lot. But why are musicians also suffering? That was a good question. Now, you may be the conduit for something. Music is passing through me. I am not the music. I am a carrier. I'm the conduit. It passes through me. How much I take from it is me, the individual. So it may pass through somebody who's taking nothing from it, but is giving a great performance. Very possible, because technique is fantastic. A lot is great. Even there's this energy which is passing through that person, and you hear it and you say, wow, that's brilliant. But the decoding is probably not happening. So when it is going through you, you identify the frequency which makes you happy. You identify that this particular sound gives me a certain feeling. You have to stop, take stock, be objective about your own music. So you're singing the note, you are the performer, at the same time you become the listener. And that is another process altogether. So yes, I completely agree that a lot of musicians suffer from such ailments. But I think, I have worked on myself a lot in my life. And I have found that if there's a combination of understanding the mechanics of the brain, the mechanics of the body, and at the same time, if we are able to, thank you, Devashish, I saw you. He says, great answer, thank you. But if we also understand that music is not just within, but it's without. Even when you're performing, it's something that you're listening to and not just playing. So if you hear it and you use your own internal body mechanics to then derive what you need to derive out of it, then you're actually working properly with it. But otherwise, it's just passing through you. It's like, you're not actively involved with it.
With that, we could have launched another round on this digital world of music and how music is now in your pockets, really, and the content.
I hate to say I've got to jump off, but
I know,
Joynto, yeah. I will leave you with this thought that look, I'm happy to connect with you guys anytime you want me to.
Thank you.
On another webinar, on a workshop webinar.
We would love to have you,
this.
Bickram. And I know that there's a time pressure for you.
I am absolutely happy to do it again if you wish me to. And you're friends, and I vibrate with the subject at hand. And great questions, both of you. I think I was able to say things because the questions were great.
Thank you so much for that.
I'll leave you with that, and lots of love, happiness, and good cheer.
Thank you.
Stay well. We will be playing the dance of Shiva too.
That's one of my favorite ones. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Right. And have a great Guru Purnima today.
Thank you. You all too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We would love to end this session with the dance of Shiva, which is one of his biggest creations, and there's also more coming out of the dance of Shiva, because Bickram probably didn't have the time to tell us a little bit more about his new projects that are coming up. And I think he has mentioned about connecting beyond here. His soundscape is large, his rhythmscape is connecting beyond the immediate surroundings of the human and the non-human to something that is related to the cosmic and the cosmic energies. Percussion, again, is, as he said, is really about high energy and high frequency. There's a lot of discussion that he's already done on the role of percussion in mental health and mental therapy. And I think we did mention earlier as to, there are two sides here where mental health is the domain of the clinician, where you're engaging with the actual therapy. And the other side that is coming out of this pandemic is really how people are now seeing various ways of feeling well. So mental illness has got this everyday element now. So a lot more people are talking about it more openly, rather than seeing this issue as limited and discriminatory or constraining. I think that is something that is coming out of the pandemic, and we will continue with those kind of discussions, hopefully with Sangeet Foundation stepping in and helping us with different speakers. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sangeet, for that.
For
probably you can put a video,
And we want to share the screen and play that for you.
And thank you all for joining in for the conversation. It's been a pleasure having all of you on the show. And we hope to have similar shows later on as well. You have seen promises from all these people to come in and share with us. There you go.
Kartidi, kartida, dati dagin dati da, dagin dati da, dagin dati da, ne kartidi, kartida, dati dagin dati da, dagin dati da, dagin dati da, ne kartidi, kartida, dati dagin dati da, dagin dati da, dagin dati da.
everybody for bearing with us here. And I think it was an amazing performance, even with Bickram, his own tabla, and he used his own bodily language to demonstrate why he believes that rhythm is everywhere. I think that was one of our opening themes, that it is not just the percussion instruments, but he finds percussion through world fusion, through world music, but also he's able to communicate with whatever he has immediately in front of him, because he has a sense of rhythm and connections with that rhythm to communicate with people. And I think he uses storytelling a lot, which is something we would love to touch on if we ever get a chance to speak to him again on a forum like this. From a leaping deer to a hissing steam train to a launching rocket, Bickram uses various imageries and visuals to bring together his music compositions. So we didn't actually talk a lot on his music compositions and the themes and imageries that he uses, and that's something that I'm sure he would love to open up. And it's a very interesting way of connecting how mental health issues can be looked within those areas of his work as well. And that is very specific to Indian culture as well, because he did mention about meditations and repetitions, which are, again, part of our oral history and our oral culture. So those are the various elements that we would love to bring on board. So with that note, I think I would like to wrap this session up. And
thank you so much for that, Sangeeta, and thank you all for joining in.